Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mr. Van Amberg. Mr. Wayland. Mr. Gust. Ms. Mastel. Mr. Capitan. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Olson.
Here.
Ms. Carlson. Mr. Strand.
Present.
We need 2 more members for a quorum, Roger.
All right. We'll just continue here and won't make any decisions without a quorum. So, and the approval of the agenda. Anything needs to be moved around or added? Not, I would look for a motion.
Steen moves to approve the agenda.
Dardis seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 2 is meeting minutes from November 18th.
Have
We have
to
a
pass
motion on that.
without a quorum.
Oh, that's right. Okay. And then we'll go on to item 3 is project news and outreach activities.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Jennifer and I'll kind of go back and forth on a few slides here, but I can open it up and feel free if Jennifer or Joel, if you want to take one of these items, let me know. There's a couple ongoing litigation activities, and of course with the settlement agreement, our teams are working to try to dismiss those as soon as possible. There has been some action in the Buffalo Red Watershed District case. This was a case in which the diversion was contesting the permit denial. And of course, the Buffalo Red did end up issuing a permit to the project as part of the settlement agreement. And so this case has been dismissed. And it's kind of starting to unroll, starting with this maybe smaller, easier ones. The next one is the contested case hearing. This was the challenge of the Minnesota DNR permit that was issued to the project. And there's been some back and forth with the administrative law judge working to resolve sort of the end recommendation and dismissal of that. And so I think we'll be hearing more in the next few weeks about that process that will go back to the DNR commissioner for their sort of final decision. So the judge just makes a recommendation. So I think these are good news things. I know one of the key things with the settlement agreement was that we wanted to show that there's follow-up to the settlement, both on the litigation side and on the mitigation side. I don't know, Joel or Jennifer, if there's anything else on litigation front that needs to be shared.
Nothing for me unless Joel has something.
Okay. Is there any questions on the litigation that us non-lawyers could talk about?
Hey,
If not-
hey, Rocky, I'll just mention, we continue to work with the Minnesota DNR on deconstructing the contested case hearing, and that's progressing along very well. And so we expect to hear something early in the new year from the DNR as far as their process, which will give us a good idea of the time frame of when that will be, when that permit will be valid. So that's going to be another bit of really good news. Once that's taken care of, then we are right now currently forming our stipulation with the parties in the federal case as well. That should be presented to the federal judge. Once the contested case is resolved, that stipulation would be acted on by the federal judge, and we would then at that point have full release of all litigation with prejudice. So a lot of good news coming up in the new year related to those resolving. I think in general, people have already kind of accepted that, and we're just going through a legal process now to ultimately take care of that. But certainly will be something to celebrate once we get complete resolution to those items.
Okay, Rocky, letter
Yes.
C.
You know, of course, conferences this year have been hampered by COVID, and so they've been virtual. Over the last couple of weeks, the North Dakota Water Conference that the Diversion's been a big part of in the past, both hosting a booth and offering a presentation, is all virtual this year. Joel gave an excellent presentation during the project updates. Jennifer and Joel put together a really neat video, 10-minute video talking about the project, where we're at, all the successes of the year, and I think it was very well received by the conference attendees. And that's something that we could probably send around to the committee too if you weren't at the conference. But I thought it was a neat way to do it, kind of pre-record the message instead of doing live presentations, you know, trying to navigate the virtual world. Of course, it's always a little different going virtual. We miss out on a lot of that word of mouth that we usually get at the conference from around the state, sort of, you know, what are they hearing about the project and that sort of thing. But I think they did a nice job with the conference this year.
Yeah, and it was good that they did the Q&As as well afterwards, so there was still some interaction, so that was good.
So how can we get access to that?
Jennifer, I think that's something that maybe we could put together that and a couple things for you to send around to the committee afterwards. Maybe that's one way to do that.
Sounds good.
Okay, Chamber podcast with Executive Director.
You know, in addition to the own Diversion Download podcast, the Chamber has also started up a podcast that has been a few episodes in now, and they wanted to do one with Joel Paulson, and Joel did a very excellent job with this podcast as well. It's available on the Chamber site. If you haven't listened to that one, it's again another good opportunity. Joel talks about the settlement and what that means for the project in the area, and so another good opportunity to get out to a new audience.
Okay, next item is under other reports, communications plan review and schedule.
So I know our goal is to have a communications plan in place, and there needs to be just a little bit of an evolution to get there. So just joining the project, what I wanted to do is part of the process is just to first take a step back and listen so I can understand the audience and the needs that I'm hearing and understand the best way to connect, and then look for those opportunities to tell the story that we're all a part of from, you know, all the different perspectives that I'm hearing along the way, and then establish some best practices and cadence. So part of that is just to evaluate our resources and tools that we're utilizing, look at the different channels that we have, and kind of streamline and make sure that those are the right ways to effectively share information with our audience. And then building out an editorial calendar so we can get ahead of the game a little bit on looking forward to some of the things where we want to build out some messaging at some key moments throughout the project. I think there's been a lot of effort to get the project off the ground until now, and with all the litigation, that it's been more reactive, and so we're trying to be a little bit more proactive looking at that now. And then just establishing a bit of a baseline for the quality of what we're producing. So not just with the messaging, but just how we're doing things behind the scenes as well, and where we're storing the information and how we're sharing it, and ensuring that we're meeting some deadlines, that we're getting information when it's some key points that we need to make sure that we're sharing it as quickly as possible. And then our goal is on January 27th meeting is to share the plan. So with that forward view in motion, just taking the foundation of the strategy that was already created with Rocky and the team, and building on that so we can add some of this new perspective and sort of proactively build that narrative in, and just analyze some of the vulnerabilities with the project that we might see along the way now that we're in this next phase of construction, and maybe simplifying our our channels a little bit so we're able to get those messages out more timely and create some really great videos during the construction phase and do some interviews and sort of tell the story of the project now that we're going into this really high volume phase of it. And then also understanding the different audiences that we're communicating to so we can share a little bit of that unified message, but adjust it where needed for the different audiences so it can relate and they can understand from the perspective that they need. So the goal will be on the next meeting. We'll have that plan built out pretty robust so it has all of the details in there that you can see, and then we can work off of for 2021 and going forward.
You know, certainly as we go forward to construction, there will be a whole different message to the public and how construction will affect their routes, whether it's farming, whether it's getting to work. And are those a responsibility fall on us, or does the P3 contractor have any responsibility there?
So there's some partnership between us. So they will have some communications that they must have some standards and share certain bits of information as well. And we'll coordinate with them as part of the partnership. So there's a lot to come with the construction phase. Definitely.
You know, one of the things Jennifer's brought sort of a fresh perspective and vision to the communications, and I think that goes with the P3 as well. I know working with Jennifer, we reviewed the P3 language to make sure that the public information officer that the P3 firm will be bringing on is sort of in line with what Jennifer's thinking for future communications and to go along with the plan. This plan will be given to each of the developers as well. And so I think having all that in place for the P3 will be really helpful.
And Mr. Olson, if I may, maybe answer your question more directly. Yes, the developer will be required to have a communications plan and a public information contact that dovetails into our communications plan. And so we are providing that directive and the information for communication for our communication program in the final RFP that will go out in January. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be a coordinated effort where, as Jennifer had mentioned, we're in partnership with each other and getting the message out about what roads are closed, what accesses have to be used, and getting the message out prior to that occurring so that we minimize the frustration of folks having to deal with the construction, because this can be pretty impactful for a lot of people. And we need to stay ahead of that. The developer, once we sign the agreement, is in this just as much as we are. And they have just as much of a prerogative to ensure that we have great communication with the public and with entities that require access and in and around the project, in that we're efficiently implementing protocols and procedures to ensure that that's the case. So.
And something I'll add to that is part of the communications plan will be building out the crisis communications plan as part of that, just to be extra prepared during this construction phase, that we're considering all of the things that we need to maybe be more reactive quickly and from that perspective.
Well, that would be good, because I would like to be ahead of the public when it comes to complaints. I would hope that we would have a plan that would get ahead of those. And I know we're not going to eliminate all the complaints, but even the inlet structure south of Horace, we got a lot of complaints about the road, and just there was issues, and certainly issues that the public brought up that we looked at that and said, yeah, that's a good idea. Flashing stop signs. And so there is a lot of working parts here that it's going to take a lot of communication and communication back to the general public. So looking forward to it, really.
Sounds
Any other comments by board members? Any questions? Then let's look at the website and social media analytics.
And I think you do have in your packet the full breakout of the analytics, but these are sort of the highlights. You can see that our top tweet over there to the right is by an infrastructure, national infrastructure publication. I think Joel and Jennifer have fielded a couple of these from the national sources. I think as P3 is getting closer to that window of sort of execution, we're getting a lot more national interest. And I think we see that on some other click-throughs on the project page as well. And one other thing we noticed, I think the Corps of Engineers really likes the drone footage. It's been a great way for them to show their headquarters as they go to search for funding or they talk about our project around the country. And I don't think Terry's on, but we had shared sort of the draft flyover for her to review, prior to these meetings, and we noticed it got viewed by over 50 people before I got a response from Terry. And so, other than the few of us that view it ahead of time, I assume Terry shared it internally and it kind of went, not viral, but I think the Corps gets a lot of use out of those as well, which is kind of interesting. But you can see we're on a lot of different mediums. We're trying to hit everybody. I think we're continuing to show, slow increases across every platform. I think there's probably room there to work with Jennifer to sort of fine tune that, and take a look at each product and say, is this meeting the objective? Where do you scale up or scale back? Take a look at some of these things now that we have Jennifer on board to really look at the analytics. And it's the same with Facebook. We're slowly increasing traffic on there. Continue to get, that audience. It's been a very positive experience as well, which I think is something that, this committee's talked about a lot over the past. It's been very positive. I think with the settlement agreement, we're seeing sort of less counter narrative to the project as well. So our Facebook page is very well timed in that regard. Now it's the official page. It's the most active spot for diversion information on Facebook. And so I think there's a lot of good to see in the future of that as well.
And we've been talking about a lot of ideas to get extra footage and really tell the story around this construction phase, because there's so many interesting things happening that people might not necessarily see because it's a little bit further out. So more to come on that as well.
All right. On Rocky, the construction video updates, you don't have anything to show us. You just kind of give it a little update, or do you have something?
We do have those to show, and I'm sharing the screen now, but I think Tammy's going to take over the screen for me and share them. And so these were shot just last week, and at the Diversion Inlet and Control Structure and the Wild Rice River Control Structure. Sorry, I'm just going to not share my screen anymore.
Well, they've had a great fall to do construction now.
Yeah, I think that's been a big benefit for the work product out there. And Mr. Chair, I think the intent tomorrow, Jennifer, I talked to Terry about this, and her report is back to back with the Outreach Committee report. And so she'd like to use our videos to sort of go on while she's giving her report.
Sure. What's completion date for this, for the inlet? Is that 2022?
I'm not sure myself without doing some digging. I don't know if Joel or Jason or somebody might have a better feel of that.
This is Eric here, guys. Looking at the Corps' latest schedule, the construction completion time frame for diversion inlet structure is June of 23. And the wild rice structure is supposed to be complete by October of 23.
And this is Jason. I think with the inlet, I was most of the work will be substantially complete by the fall of 2022, but there'll be that cleanup the spring of 2023.
And these are part of some of the things that we're working on for the communications plan, is getting some of these like key facts together on the project. Because I know I need to learn these as well, but it's great for being able to share this information to those who need to know where we're at now, where we're headed. It's really great footage, though.
The weather's almost perfect for drone flights actually this fall, so we got really lucky.
It is. I think we can still get a few more in.
Well, I think it's kind of amazing. I mean, the wild race control structure is quite a bit bigger than the inlet control structure, and they've already almost caught up to where they are on the inlet structure. And so it's, as you can see here, this is probably one of the biggest concrete pours to date, 1,850 cubic yards. That pretty much tapped out Aggregate Industries for the day as far as concrete supply in the FM area.
And something we're also doing when we're going out there to shoot the drone footage is starting to capture some one-on-one interviews with some of the individuals on site to just capture their feedback on where they are in the project, so we can utilize that for some information, historic information, or telling the story as we go forward.
And I know Jennifer mentioned the sort of editorial calendar coming up. There are 2 construction projects expected to start in 21 by the Corps. It's the interstate roadways and the Drain 27 wetland project. And so we'll have to work on, the right way to show progress on those as well. If there's any other questions or suggestions or discussion on the videos.
I hope we can get more concrete in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, Commissioner Campbell, that's certainly going to be an issue. With the P3 arrangement, it's, the development teams obviously will probably set up some of their own batch plants, import some of their own materials. But with the additional projects the Corps is letting and leading, it's going to be an awful lot of pressure on the materials market in 2020.
Yeah, we had a small concrete pour project that was scheduled at our landfill, and there was no concrete available.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to coordinate those efforts in 2021, Commissioner Campbell.
We kind of anticipate that'd be a problem, but hopefully they'll understand the market needs and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and that's kind of gets to the paradigm of where we're going with the amount of construction coming up over the next 6 to 7 years, and it really is going to be a kind of an immediate shock to the system, and I do think the industry will catch up to a certain extent, but the development teams are going to have to bring some sufficient capabilities in order to supply the materials necessary, because that, as you can imagine, Commissioner Campbell, will have these 2 structures here, the Red River Control Structure starting in 2023, which is twice the size of these structures here. We'll have 18 bridges being built simultaneously, 2 aqueducts, as well as all the drop structures and everything else into the channel, and then mobility improvements and roadways. So I think you've keyed in on a pretty big issue that's going to be facing our area as far as construction materials are concerned.
Well, I think it's an area that our outreach should focus on. you know, what the demands on product's going to be, and how we can at least stay in front with all of, you know, whether it's our government agencies or whatever that are planning projects, that nobody is shocked when all of a sudden they want to try to meet a construction deadline, and there's these demands on product. So we need to stay on top of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good comment. You know, not just governmental projects, but also the private sector. And there's just a lot of activity that needs the support of the concrete. So that's, and there'll be a lot of products that I'm sure will see a shortfall.
And Roger, I think this is going to have impacts beyond just our metro area. I think it's going to go, you know, quite a ways east and quite a ways west too. You know, even the areas down in Detroit Lakes country, I think all of those are going to probably see some change in demands because of this.
And it
Yeah,
could be private
Commissioner
industry.
Campbell.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Roger. You know, I think this is something I've been struggling with for quite some time, is how do we get the message out concerning the impacts of this project that nobody's really talking about yet. And, you know, I think we're talking about just a couple of items here, but, you know, another big one in my mind is workforce and labor and what that's going to do to our area. We already know we have a shortage of labor in workforce in a number of different industries. The developer is going to bring folks in, and they're going to find people to work on this project. And you know, how does that impact the housing market? How does that impact retail? You know, the tentacles just continue to spread out on where the impacts are on this. And you know, I feel like we're somewhat unprepared as a community for what we're about to face in 2021. And you know, I've kind of tasked Jennifer to brainstorm some ideas here, because this is a big issue for our community. And as we go through construction, and all of those different impacts are going to have, you know, unintended consequences that we just don't know at this point. So how do we ready folks, and how do we get people to understand the magnitude of what we're venturing into? And, you know, unfortunately it's happening, and, you know, we're going to have construction on the channel in probably about 9 months. So,
well, Joel, while it's going to be a challenge for a while, which we've talked about before, there's also within those challenges for our communities, there's also opportunities. You know, when we're looking for our areas to grow, you know, what better message can there be that if you come here and you buy a house here, there's going to be good, adequate employment for you. So I think there's the positive side of that too, that we always got to keep in mind and be able to promote.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the trick, I think, Commissioner Campbell, is, you know, how do we leverage the value and benefits of everything that's going to occur, you know, for our communities, and do it in a way that, you know, creates lasting impact and you know, as a result of the construction of the project. Commissioner Campbell, I guess I likened it to, you know, we're going to be bringing a lot of people to Fargo Moorhead. How do we get them to stay here after the construction is done, right? Let's hope we don't have harsh winters for the next 6 years.
One step at a time. Let's get them here first.
Mr. Chair, I did notice it looks like Jake is online, and it looked like Katie was on the list of participants too, which would mean there's a quorum, just to note.
All right. We'll do the minutes towards the end. Item 4 is the committee input on outreach activity plan for upcoming months.
So just a couple things going forward. I think Joel did a nice job talking that, more good news in resolving litigation. I think this is, the benefits of the settlement agreement, that we're going to be getting good news after good news after good news. And at some point, to the public and to others, may all sound the same. I know reporters in the past have struggled at times updating on the diversion, because all of our news generally sounds, the same. It's sort of iterations of the same thing. But I think these good news are going to build a lot of momentum, and going into the legislative session, that's always a good thing. And so we're working as our team here to figure out the right way to sort of roll that out to a way that is consumable by the public, and sort of builds on that narrative that we're entering a new phase. And then of course, legislative sessions coming up, and that usually takes an awful lot of focus and attention by Joel and his team. And so we're working to prepare them for that. And we do have some new elected officials and new committee members. I think you heard Commissioner Jim Capitan's name on the roll call list. I'm not sure he's on this month, but I understand that Cass County has appointed him to replace Commissioner Pollock on the committee. And so we'll welcome him at a future meeting and get him up to speed however he needs to be. And then just an FYI that the holiday lights display, you can see a picture there. If it's something we've done to try to be sort of more apparent in the community. And we did that last year, we did it this year. It's really neat down at Lindenwood. There's sort of a charitable fundraiser down there, and a bunch of local businesses and entities have set up different displays. And so our team, the outreach team, put together that using a bunch of stuff we had handy. And it's really cool when you drive by at night, and looks like Santa's on a boat in the water, with bringing flood protection to the community. So sort of kind of a neat little Christmas theme. Encourage you all to look at that. But other than that, we're looking forward to hearing from you all on what needs you're seeing out there in the community as well.
I'm hearing a lot less negative talk on the diversion, and a lot more, this thing really is going to get built, isn't it? So I think this settlement really has turned the corner. And again, I want to thank John Strand for really having an integral part in that, along with Joel, our executive director, and appreciate the efforts that went into that, and certainly the huge paybacks I think that are happening right now. So any suggestions for January? Anything you'd like to see?
This is John Strand. I'll just join in. I'm a real visual kind of a person. Something that I think that'd be nice somehow, I don't know how we do it, is to show visually how we are at getting toward our goal. Like when you have fundraisers, you have a thermometer and you show your progress like toward the goal you're aiming for. I don't know if there is anything out there like that, but it'd be nice to have a real visual, like a marquee or something that becomes the image of the diversion, that shows how close we are to finishing it.
John, that's good. Probably a couple of years ago, I think we talked about that, having a thermometer up there, just showing progress, someplace real visual, whether it's a drive-by situation or whether it's a little blip on the form or online, or something that visually shows what we're doing. And that was mentioned. It hasn't been for a while, but certainly something I think we should explore.
It's good feedback. I like using visuals as well, so leave that with me. I'll take it away and think of some ideas for that.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you. Any other good ideas? Any ideas we can criticize?
Looks like our time's almost up. No.
Yeah, it looks like it. All right. Appreciation for outgoing members. Ken Pollock. Appreciate his inputs over the years. He was very vocal and had good ideas. So I thank him for his service. Anybody else, Rocky, that we replaced?
Yeah, Commissioner Grant Wayland, who I don't think is on today. Grant was a valuable member of this committee for a long time, brought a good perspective. So I really appreciated him at the Minnesota legislature because he seemed to have some amazing connections from his past life that were always very useful.
Yep, he was a steady voice and brought a lot of good to the whole diversion, really.
Roger, this is Jake.
Hi, Jake.
Yeah, so I was listening to Kevin's comments about the infrastructure being taxed, but I'm delighted that we're starting to have those kinds of problems. That means we're moving.
A lot of smiles, Jake. Yeah, a lot of smiles around if you can't see us.
Yeah. All right. Joel, do you have an executive director comments?
Yeah, I'll just say a couple words here, Commissioner Olson, and I guess I share some of the sentiment that you did earlier that folks are coming to the table, they're engaging us. You'll see it with the board meeting tomorrow. I believe there's 10 to 15 memorandums of understanding that are in the board packet for approval. Those were all have been worked on for some over a year. A lot of those are with third-party organizations and really defines the roles and responsibilities of the diversion for our obligations to them. And a lot of these organizations were hesitant to execute those MOUs until they felt construction was imminent. And we're seeing a cascade of those MOUs coming through at this point. And people are preparing their organizations and their political subdivisions and their entities for what they believe is going to be full-scale construction within the year. And I'm also been reached by a number of upstream folks that I think had a difficult time trying to communicate with the diversion authority in the past, who have come and we're having productive conversations about their individual issues and trying to find solutions and trying to find consensus. We're also reaching out to all of the impacted cemeteries. I believe there's 4 of them, and setting up meetings with the cemetery authorities or the folks that govern the cemeteries to find solutions for their individual issues, as well as actively implementing action plans for all of the different programs that we've set up in regards to the settlement agreement that took place. And so a very massive effort on our part to make sure that we're moving forward quickly and effectively and getting out and communicating with folks, at this time as we have momentum moving into construction and transitioning into construction, to really provide as much clarity as possible. And we're at a point in the duration of this program that we've never been at before, where we can provide that clarity and we can provide that certainty for folks. And so it's very important that that we get out there and we start taking care of these issues once and for all. So, with that, again, also I just want to take a moment to express, my joy of having Jennifer join the team. She's been on the job now for about a month and a half and quickly come up to speed, really drinking from a fire hose per se, but she's brought a lot of great ideas and perspective to the table. So I'm excited to see how our communications program is going to evolve, as we move into next year as well. So a very exciting time for all of us, I think, and built upon the work of folks that are members of this committee over the last decade. I kind of give the analogy that we had been going down a train tunnel and maybe not necessarily able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we can see it now, and we're moving in that direction. To ultimately bring effective, reliable flood protection for the region.
Thank you, Joel. Just a comment from the joint board and really maybe one of the issues we're looking forward to solving is the flow easement evaluation, and that's a fairly large effort, and Crown Appraisals is doing that. So we're just looking forward to closing that loose end, and so that we can go out and start negotiating for the right to store water, and really the right to make this project work without harming downstream interests. So it's a big sacrifice on their part, and we certainly will look to properly mitigate for that right. So before we adjourn, we're going to go back to our minutes, and we have a quorum now. So I'll ask for a motion on our minutes.
This is John Strand. I move approval.
Second by Campbell.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, and I'll ask for an adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more comment if I could, please.
Oh, you sure can, John.
I know I haven't been able to attend these meetings, and as much as I'd like to, my schedule will improve this next year. So thanks for bearing with me. But I just want to say how nice it is and relieving it is to hear Kevin Campbell's voice. Kevin, I'm relieved you're back with us, and I know we all join in sending you the best energies we can. So glad to hear you're back with us, and thanks for being who you are.
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you, John. We have a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Campbell.
Is there a second?
Second by Strand.
Okay, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, committee members.